We're a few weeks in here to our milking and moving routine, and it's really cool to see how the animals are all learning about this. You can see in the background my goats, they're already down at the base ready to come in. But even past them, look at the chickens. We've been trying to give the chickens some lessons in scratching and foraging up the cow pats. So we've been sprinkling the manure with a little bit of chicken feed to teach them to go out there and scratch it, because in that cow pat are worms, larvae, that are more flies. And if the chickens can get to them before they become flies, they get free food, we get free food for the chickens, and we get less flies. It interrupts the life cycle. So the chickens are learning, the goats are learning, my dog's learning, I'm learning, everybody's learning, and it's really cool to see the progress. Just a week and change in, and things are getting easier and easier every day. Nice cool foggy morning here, and feeling good, ready to get back at it. So let's get in. I want to show you my morning. Sit. I want to show you my morning routine here, how I move these animals every day with this movable netting. Now I'm going to throw this out there. I'm working on a better solution. So this netting for these animals, the setup I currently have is time consuming. But I just want to show you the process I'm currently doing, which may give you some ideas for your future homestead. Some things you'd like to do or not do. And get an idea of how I move cows and goats all at once. So my day starts by taking the goats inside, then we'll come back out here and we'll move this whole setup. And we're rotationally grazing them right across our hill here. So let's get started. I'm gonna use my pup to help me move my goats. First I gotta put this in the barn though, so let's go do that first. The first step to our morning move is to get the goats inside of the barn. We have 2 paddocks here, movable paddocks, and to move the animals in the paddocks would be pretty difficult. So instead of trying to move the animals and the paddocks at the same time, what I do is I take the goats, I put them inside the barn, then I move their paddock forward. I kind of leapfrog over the existing paddock that the cows are in. Next I move the cows into the new paddock, and then the goats come into a forward motion as well. Now I've been switching goats and cows lately. So some days I'll have cows in the behind paddock and goats in the ahead paddock, and when I move leapfrog in front of it, the goats go into the new paddock. So the point is, for every day, 2, maybe 3 days, is the most one animal is on one paddock. That way you keep your worm problem down, and if you're using both animals in both paddocks as you go, they can eat the parasites that hurt each other. Plus, maximum of 3 days on one spot so that the grass isn't harmed and it can grow back nice and healthy. So let's start moving these animals. We're gonna get the goats in, and I'm gonna have my herding shepherd, German shepherd, as a helper here. Let's go, pup. Heel. Heel. My shepherd is in training. When I said he was a help, it's a bit sarcasm. But his presence is helpful. We're getting there. Goats are inside. Now, as you'll notice, there's one empty paddock. I don't have to worry about animals. It's much easier to move this way. So we're gonna leapfrog the back paddock to a new paddock over the existing paddock. And then I'm going to slide the hoop house that's up on the top of the hill there, the little movable animal shelter. It's gonna go wherever the goats are going to be, which I believe today will be in the new paddock. Come on, Pop. I want to show you the progression of how quickly this pasture in this particular setup is being consumed, what it starts off as, what it ends as. This is where the animals are headed. You'll notice that the grass is 6 to 8, 10 at most inches high. That's kind of a real sweet spot for your pasture. Now there are some weeds popping up, which is why I'm running the goats first. You'll notice our over here, Queen Anne's lace, wild carrot. That's growing up all over the place, and there's lots of seed heads. The goats gobble up these seed heads, grind them up in their teeth. They're part of our weed management. There's this little guy, I don't know what it is. There's some tall red clover. All kinds of really tall, more woody browse that the goats like. They'll come in here first and mow it down. It'll look like the next paddock over. Let's take a look at that. So here we're in the next paddock where the goats have been, and you'll notice there's way less of those weeds. There's no high weeds at all. The pasture now is been heavily munched, and after the goats are at it, you'll notice we've got the cows in here now. The cows are going to take this, and pretty much the goats took care of a lot of that woody browse. Now the cows are going to go through and eat a lot of the pasture. We don't want it to get too low, although currently it is getting pretty low, as you'll see in our next move to the side here where everyone's been, what's now complete. Let's see what done looks like. So here's what's left here. A little bit more pasture, a little bit more grass, about ankle high in some spots. By the end of today, that'll be all done and the cows will be ready to move forward. This is where everyone has been for what is day 3. And you'll notice by day 3, this is mowed very low. I mean, my ankles aren't covered at all. There's no grass up high. It is actually more mowed than what I would like. We're working out the rhythm. This is a pretty new system. We've been at it for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think 5 moves now, and this was the first time I left them on for 2 days. Actually, what I should say is it's the first time that animals have been on the spot for 3 days, and it's pretty well mowed. You're looking for about 4 inches of leftover grass with some trampled matter to rebuild your soil and the health in that soil. So this is a bit too much. I'm still playing around with that sweet spot, so it's part of the learning. You can't be Joel Salatin in a day. We talked about that in a recent video. You can watch that video if you want to see what I'm talking about. But anyway, that's what it looks like. Now we're going to start moving it. This is our current movable water setup. Can you go turn the water off, Bubba? I don't know if it's on. We have a big Rubbermaid water trough, and we have a little giant automatic water hooked up to it with a long flexible hose. I have a stake which helps keep that hose from kinking as it comes in. And as you notice, it spans both paddocks. The goats have one side, the cows have the other, and I just slip it under the fence. And I use that stake there to make sure the fence doesn't get into the water so that the electricity is hitting the water. The electricity doesn't pass through the plastic, so you don't have to worry about it touching the plastic. You do have to make sure it doesn't touch the metal. So I move this before I set up my new paddock because it's easier when there's not as much stuff in the way. First thing I do is I dump it, and I just drag it over the new spot. I pull that stake up, I drag it over the new spot, I put the stake in, and then we turn the water on and we refill it. I usually turn the water off earlier the day before so that it's not full, because I hate to waste water. So the evening in the barn, we shut the water off, and by the next morning the cows and goats have drank most of it, and at that point there's very little water in here. Something got changed last night. We forgot to turn the water off and it's full right now, so we're going to waste a little bit of water. But I try not to do that. The nice thing about moving this every day is it keeps this water fresh. There's never any mosquito larvae in there. There's never any algae growing. It's always fresh. So I'm going to dump it. And to dump it, I just pull the stake up. And I just keep the stake like here, dump the water. I throw the stake right in there, and then I drag this to the new paddock. There you go. That's how we do that. Little side on the goat side, big side on the cow side. It's on a hill, so you make sure to put your fill valve on the downhill side of the hill so it doesn't overflow. It can do it on a hillside, it's not a big deal. One more very interesting thing about our current 2 or 3 day moving pattern. This is pretty cool. If you look in here at the farthest forward paddock, you'll notice some big fresh cow patties. The cow patties are currently in our farthest forward paddock where the cows are. Of course, those cow patties are the freshest ones. They are behind poultry netting. The chickens can't yet get to them. In this paddock, the one that we're about to move, are 2-day-old cow patties. They are still protected by our electric netting. At 3 days or 4 days old, you go through the netting and you find unprotected cow patties. These are now cow patties that the chickens have access to. Here's a couple they haven't found. Well, they started to find. You'll notice these cow patties are being scratched apart. Right there you can see there's a chicken footprint in this cow patty. So they're coming out here, they're scratching at the cow patties. This is what we want to see, not on fresh cow patties, but on 3-day-old cow patties. Because what happens, if the chickens go and scratch a fresh cow patty, they don't do any damage to the fly population. Flies have to have time to find the cow patty, lay the egg, have the larva start to hatch. At 3 days old, these cow patties are full of little maggots. If the chickens scratch on day 1, the flies don't lay eggs there, nothing happens to the fly population. On day 3, if the chickens find the cow patties and they start scratching through, they're going to find all kinds of larvae. They're going to start eating that larva. The fly thinks it's done its job by laying its eggs in a safe spot. Now the chicken comes along and gobbles up those little fly larvae, and you are reducing the fly population on your homestead. As you know, here on our homestead, we're trying to use fly predators, we're trying to use fly traps, which I have one set up behind me over there. This is all part of that big picture of fly control. You're never going to get rid of all the flies, but if you can reduce the population by interrupting their life cycle, by doing something like this, that will definitely help lower the population. Now our chickens are still learning to do this, so you might have seen we've sprinkled some feed on these cow patties to encourage the scratching, to let them know, hey, dig through these, there's some good stuff. Chickens will love those worms. It's time to move our movable goat shelter, and I designed this thing to be able to actually be dragged. It's best to drag it with a tractor or an ATV, but I'm doing daily moves up here and it's not too hard to drag by myself. I have this nice thick tow rope which I just throw around my shoulders. It's on skids, and just using my own body weight, leaning back, I can drag this thing into a new paddock. Proper way to pull up electric netting. You don't pull it loose and roll it into a ball. That would be a nightmare. You pull one stake up, you fold it into the pile, leaning it against your hip to help with that weight, and you'll notice as you fold them into each other, they drag all the excess behind them. That's the right way to move movable poultry netting or sheep or goat netting. I'm now ready to start setting up the new paddock. I find the easiest way to do this is to actually toss the paddock fencing first and then try to stand it up. Trying to stand it up while you're tossing it, I find a little bit more challenging. We have real ledgy, rocky soil, and a lot of times I need to pound stakes in with a mallet. I can't just step in. So the way to do that, take this fencing that you have nice and neatly, you take the very end of it, actually we're gonna position it properly here. Take the end piece, throw it, and work your way backwards. Will, but first we have to open it up for the goats to come in. That looks good. Well, that's great, but we got to open it for goats. So for now, we'll just do this. The goats are going to be coming into this paddock, so we got to leave a gate open for them. And actually, I usually will lay this like this to kind of guide them in, as like a funnel. Just like that. All right, let's do this up here. You're going to stand them in the ground as I go. Don't worry if you don't get them perfect. Here's the mallet if you want to try mallet. Just a little bit. If you can get it, great. Now, and I'll get them finished. Go on the mallet. To feed our electric fence, which keeps getting further and further away from our electric charger, I have a spool of electric twine. This is one of the cheaper spools. It's not a 3-to-1, it's just a 1-to-1 ratio, but that's okay because each day we're only moving like 10 feet, 20 feet. So I just loosen our spool and I pull it to the new area, and as I go, I hook up the fence pieces to it. And then I keep on going. And this spool fits nicely on top of these fence posts, just like that. It stays right there. So that is our current, and I say current because it's always changing. This is our current rotational grazing setup. There are some things I like about the use of the netting. It is good at keeping the goat kids in. The goat kids would slip underneath the other kind of fencing. And that's not a big problem, except for that they're right next to the cows. And if one of the little kids got into the big cow area, a cow could kick a little kid and kill it, and the little kid wouldn't know to avoid that cow. So while we have little kids out on this pasture, this is what we use to divide them. Now, the netting is slow to use, and it's expensive. I could take step-in posts and 2-strand wire, replicate the same kind of setup with that. I feel like it would go quicker and it would be much cheaper. I'm going to try to experiment in using that. Perhaps I'll just take the kids and put them in a whole different paddock altogether, behind everybody. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm gonna do, but I would like to speed this process up a little bit. I have to go down the hill like this because if I have to mow it with the tractor and I have fencing horizontally, I have to pull all the fencing up to get out of the tractor's way. Downhill slots like this work because I can mow either side of it if the animals aren't keeping up with the growth, and I don't have to pull any fencing up and everyone can continue going as they are. That's why I have it that way. If you have any suggestions on how I could speed this process up, what could make it better, I am all ears. Always looking to improve things here at our homestead. Thanks for watching, and I hope it gives you some ideas. Links below to our gear. We have a electric fence, a buyer's guide, which is constantly changing and adapting to what our current thoughts and feelings are on it. So click here to check out that buyer's guide. It'll hopefully help you, walk you through what we use currently, what we found to be the best currently, and help you figure out what you need on your own homestead if you are buying electric fencing to do this. The best way to do this is strip grazing, having permanent fencing on 2 sides and just having strips separating it and moving. And it's something I'm working towards. I'm just having a hard time figuring out how to strip graze this hill without making it so that it can't be mowed. So it's one of the challenges I'm trying to overcome. If you want to learn how to build that little portable, movable livestock structure, click here to watch that video. And don't forget to sign up to our email list so that you don't miss any of our videos. YouTube doesn't share all our videos with all our subscribers, but we do when we send out our emails every week.